All right, let's get the show started. And the show it'll be. Today we're going to be reacting. No, we're not reacting. Today we're going to be watching the Alexander McQueen Autumn Winter 2023 show entitled Anatomy. Let's get the show started, shall we? So right off the bat, I think it should be said that my favorite designer and one of my favorite design houses is Alexander McQueen. My favorite designer ever, Alexander Lee McQueen. Rest his soul. The house now is being creatively directed by Sarah Burton, and I've actually enjoyed her work. I think the collections that she puts out are very referential to Alexander McQueen himself and really fit the DNA and the house codes of Alexander McQueen. All right, now, anatomy. What could that mean? Thankfully for us, Sarah Burton, the creative director at Alexander McQueen, has left us a paragraph on the Alexander McQueen webpage to sort of talk about what it is she's saying. I'll put it up here again if you didn't see it from the intro. You got it? You good? All right, let's get going. But to sort of summarize the paragraph, it really is talking about the anatomy and the shapes of flowers and people and how it can be really inverted, turned inside out, the different shapes that could be made from it, and how interesting the orchid mimics both predator and prey. Sort of the language of flowers is the way that she puts it. And I think it's a very beautiful way to put it. Orchids are one of the most fascinating shapes in nature. They sort of envelop themselves, and there's even predators that evolve to look like orchids, as we've seen in the praying mantis. It's interesting that now she's playing with orchids because, as we saw a few collections ago, maybe a collection or two ago, there was a collection entitled Mycelium. Mycelium are spore strands. If you've seen The Last of Us, you probably know what mycelium looks like. It's the strands. I digress. The idea of playing with these orchids and the anatomy of the orchids and the anatomy of humans and orchids, I think is a very fascinating take. Without further ado, let's really get into this and really analyze this runway. There's a lot of style lines and interesting shapes that really put the collection as a family, really make it mesh well together. A lot of collections have a lot of random ideas. This collection felt like a family. It felt like regardless of what piece you saw, it had a sibling somewhere in this collection. And I think that's a beautiful way to organize a collection. If a collection's supposed to be this family, I always get confused when designers have these really oddball pieces that don't mesh with anything in the collection. I think Sarah Burton's done a really great job of making a collection that has a really strong flow and narrative. There are some things that I wish were done a little differently, like that white dress, but we'll get there when we get there. So I would say the three common themes from this collection are tailoring, leather, and orchids. And as we go through the looks, you'll see what I mean. The tailoring comes with all the pieces that show crisp suiting, or even the denim looks, even some of the looks that are a little bit less structured. I do think that one of the most fascinating details is a heeled pant. A pant that sort of flows into the heel, whether it's built into the heel or it's like a stirrup that sits at the front of the heel. It's a really interesting idea, and it elongates the silhouette in a very dramatic way, and I think that's stunning. Problem is I move a lot while I'm sitting, so if you hear my chair creak, I apologize. I'm doing my best with what I got. I think that within those three core elements, you can see how at least every piece touches those elements at least one way, shape, or another. If it's not the color drawing the pieces together, it's the orchid print and or the style lines. What do I mean by that? The necklines. There's a lot of interesting necklines, whether it be just bare, shoulders out, a giant partition, or this curved neckline shape. All of those really play into this idea of showing the human anatomy. And I think that's extremely fascinating. I don't know if that was intentional, but part of me thinks that was really intentional. As well as the pant heel. I think that also plays around with the human anatomy, creating this visual illusion that the person's legs are longer and therefore they are taller. It's really interesting. A lot of the suiting looks transformed into dresses, which I do think that is extremely smart. I think in suiting, we really only think about 2-3 piece suits realistically, a lot of dresses can be made beautifully as suits. I think some of the best looks were the trench coat looks. There was 2 of them. Well, actually, no, there was like 4. I think there were 4. All of them were very, very impactful. I thought they were stunning. From the first one that had this sort of beige nude, I do wish we saw that color somewhere else because it's the only place we see it, so it sticks out, but it acts as a really, really good accent in the beginning. Because then when we see the purple trench, it really marries itself beautifully. And then we see so many other things. That was another thing. Seeing the purple was a really beautiful touch this season. There's usually, in my opinion, the colors that I always see in Alexander McQueen shows are black, white, gray, and red. So seeing this purple was a beautiful accent. I genuinely think that when we think about orchids, we do think about this purple color. I think of it a lot more brighter, a little bit more fuchsia, but I do like this really deep purple. It's beautiful, and in this leather, it works beautifully with a lot of the leather pieces. That's another common thread that happens a lot on the Alexander McQueen runway, leather. We see a lot of leather, reiterations of leather jackets, reiterations of leather moto jackets even. It's a really, really great house code that the House of McQueen has really been growing upon consistently. And I think it's extremely strong, it's extremely fascinating, and I think a lot of other houses do it, of course. We see it with Jeremy Scott even. But I think the way they do it is a lot more classic, a lot more focused on tailoring, which again is an integral house code at Alexander McQueen. I think some of the most fascinating pieces from this collection have to be these fuller dresses. There's a lot of these fuller dresses that have these amazing style lines on them and interesting asymmetry. And I think they're meant to represent the orchids in this collection. I think they're meant to represent the anatomy of flowers worn by humans. And I think that that's beautiful. Not only are we seeing the orchids as a print, we're seeing them as an inspiration to the shape of these garments. And I think that's extremely stunning. Part of me wishes that a lot of these partition shapes and these curved shaped hemlines could have been maybe more shaped like lotuses. Why did I keep saying lotuses? Could be better shaped like orchids. I feel like a lot of the interesting style lines up around the bust could have been warped to look more like orchids, because then it would have further played around with this imagination. But I don't hate what they're doing. These giant partitions that cover the face are interesting because they affect the silhouette. They change the way that you're perceiving the person, much like flowers and predators in wildlife. I think it's actually fascinating because you don't really get to see the women's shoulder frame, her anatomy, if you will, until you see her from the back. And I think that that's an interesting concept. I also am wondering why this curved hemline, this curved neckline didn't appear more. We only saw it on 2 looks, I believe. And I do think it had some opportunity to appear as a standalone bustier or maybe an interesting style line on a different shorter gown. I'm not sure, but I did wish I could see it more because I did favor it over the huge partition shapes. But I do think that they were both still stunning regardless. So another oddball out was the denim looks. There was, I think, 2 or 3 denim looks in this collection. I actually personally think they didn't feel out of place. I thought the denim was really nice and crisp and tailored, and I think it actually fit well into the DNA at this show. The standout pieces to me were these molded rib knit dresses. They were insane. They were phenomenal. The way they fit the body, the way they opened and curved, the molding that looked like they were causing. It really did, in my opinion, create an interesting symbiotic visual of the anatomy of a human and a flower. And I think that's beautiful. I think that Sarah Burton was extremely successful with those pieces, creating the idea of this human anatomy fused with this orchid. I think it was beautifully done there. Another special shout out I specifically want to talk about is the black trench with the white gray orchid printed on it. If you pay attention, there's sort of a weird visual effect happening where the buttons almost look like eyes on the orchid, making me think that it could have been intentional. It kind of looks like a praying mantis to me that has these eyes looking at you. I think that's an interesting idea since she was talking about orchids as predator and prey, sort of resembling animals that look like orchids. There's flowers out there that insects have evolved to mimic. A lot of spiders and praying mantis have evolved to look like these beautiful flowers. And I sort of love the idea of these buttons sort of creating a faux eye, if you will. I think it's fascinating. I think it truly is assisting in this idea of the orchid and the anatomy of an orchid being played around with predator and prey. I think it's beautiful. Sort of camouflage. My least favorite look has to go to the white dress. I was not a huge fan of the cable knit in this application, but I do think it was very successful in others. I think for me, it has to deal with the skirt. If this didn't have that draped slashing, I might have liked it more. That's just my opinion. I will say the top of this dress is killer. The red bubble hem partition mullet orchid dress. I thought that one was phenomenal as well. I also really, really liked, what was it? The red bugle beaded dress. That one was stunning as well. I love the tears in it, and on this one, that cut was way more successful than its white counterpart. That's just my opinion. You ain't gotta stay here for it. But if you're watching, you're here for it. But all in all, I thought this collection was amazing, and I thought it was beautiful, and I love the concept behind it. Again, I do wish there was more playing with what the human anatomy and the orchids would look like if they were more symbiotic. We do see some examples of that in the rib knit dresses, but I did wish we could have seen more and more examples of the anatomy in a transparent sense. If you're going to show these X-rayings on Instagram and not have any of that in the collection, I do feel like we maybe missed out on a potential runway opportunity, a potential really, really visually interesting design. And I think that the collection could have benefited from it. It could have been in the same material as the first trench coat. It could have been in a sheer white. It could have been in a sheer black. Could you imagine if it was a sheer look with the orchid still on it and sort of played around with this idea of empty space and volume, which is a common theme in this collection? Perhaps. It could have been beautiful. I even wonder how cool it would have been if these stand-up partitioned hemlines were sheer and you can see sort of an illusion of the person through it, or if they came up even big. I'm just rambling now. I might have to go draw that. That might be really, really cool. Ooh, I got a little too excited there. Anyways, all in all, I give this collection an A+. Of course, I'm biased because I really love Sarah Burton's work at Alexander McQueen, and I genuinely really love everything that the House of Alexander McQueen has almost always came out with. As this runway is coming to an end, this video will also come to an end. So I will talk to y'all later. I hope you all enjoy the commentary on this collection, and if you enjoyed it enough, leave a like, comment, subscribe. I would love to do more of these. Every time there's about every day I see a new collection come out and I want to talk about it. And I would love to talk about it with all of you. If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Come back next time. Maybe we'll review another runway. Maybe we'll just talk about it. Maybe we'll just scream and goon and fawn over it. Because some of these collections are extremely fascinating. And actually it brings up an idea. Why are we seeing so many animals and plants on the runway all of a sudden? Is nature taking over? Are we more impacted by nature than we think? Just food for thought. Anyways, I'm gonna go. I'll talk to y'all later. Have fun. Drink your water. Have a great day. And above all else, I don't know. Bye!